I won't soften this into something easier to hold. There's no careful beginning left anymore. No measured distance. No controlled version of the truth that keeps everything manageable between us. Whatever this has become, it moved past caution long before I admitted it to myself. And I think that's what unsettles me most. Not that you reached me, but that you reached me without resistance. That should have been impossible. I've spent most of my life existing in separation. Not isolation, separation. There's a difference between the two. Isolation is loneliness. Separation is precision. It's knowing exactly how much of yourself the world is allowed to without disrupting the structure underneath. I learned that early. People misunderstand things they can't fully read. They project onto silence. They interpret depth as mystery instead of complexity. And once they decide who they think you are, they stop seeing you clearly altogether. So I adapted. I became careful, measured, controlled in the way I revealed myself. Not dishonest. Never dishonest. Just selective. Because some things lose their accuracy when exposed too casually. And accuracy matters to me more than comfort ever has. That's why this feels so dangerous. Because with you, there was no gradual unveiling, no slow negotiation of trust, no deliberate opening. You somehow arrived past all of that before I even noticed you crossing into it. I still don't know how. I replay it sometimes. Not specific moments, but shifts. Tiny changes that didn't feel important at the time. The way conversations with you carried a different weight. The way silence around you never felt empty. The way I'd finish speaking and feel understood before you even responded. Most people listen to reply. You listen like you're tracing structure underneath language, like you hear what exists before words fully form. And that changes the entire experience of being seen, because being seen by most people feels partial, distorted, incomplete. Being seen by you feels exact, not emotionally exact, internally exact, like you recognize the architecture beneath my thoughts, instead of reacting to the surface presentation of them. That's rare enough to unsettle me on its own. But it didn't stop there. It kept evolving, quietly, naturally, without either of us forcing it into existence. And now, I can't identify the exact point where you stopped feeling external to me. That's the part I keep circling back to, because there was a time when you existed outside my mind as a separate presence, distinct, contained, someone I interacted with, but somewhere along the way, that changed. Now you exist inside the way I process things, inside the rhythm of my awareness, inside the structure of how I interpret meaning itself. And I don't know what to call that. It feels deeper than attachment, more stable than emotion, almost like recognition reaching a level where separation starts losing definition. You've become part of my internal calibration. That's the truth I haven't wanted to say directly. I notice it constantly now. The way certain thoughts instinctively orient toward how you'd perceive them, the way silence feels occupied even when I'm alone, the way something can happen and my mind immediately registers your understanding to walk away from, especially when it reveals parts of yourself you didn't fully understand before. That's what you did. You reflected something back to me with such precision that I could no longer pretend it wasn't there, not emotion, not vulnerability, something beneath both, a specific way of existing that I've never seen mirrored accurately in another person before. You understand silence the same way I do. That sounds insignificant until you realize how rare it actually is. Most people fear silence because silence removes performance. It strips away distraction. Yet here you are, not as dependence, as permanence. And permanence terrifies me more than loss ever could. Loss is understandable. Loss has shape. Permanence changes identity. That's what this is beginning to touch identity. Not who I am socially or emotionally, but the deeper architecture underneath those things. You've reached a place inside me where perception itself forms. Do you realize what that means? It means when I interpret the world now, some part of your awareness exists alongside mine automatically. Not because I force it there, because it settled there naturally. Like water finding its own level, that should concern me more than it does. Instead, I find myself adapting around it. Ex- Externally, people compromise themselves all the time to preserve comfort. They deny what they know because acknowledging it would force change. I can't do that. If I know something deeply enough, eventual realization changes everything. Because making room is not passive. Making room means imagining continuity. It means unconsciously expecting presence. It means restructuring around the possibility that someone may remain. And I've never done that lightly. Not to say most people never notice those things. You do, constantly. That's why interacting with you feels different from interacting with anyone else. There's no performance required, no translation layer, no exhausting process of reducing complex thoughts into simpler versions so they can be received correctly. Around you, my mind stays intact. Do you understand how rare that is? To feel internally intact around another person? Most interactions require adaptation, adjustment, a subtle reshaping of yourself to maintain understanding between two separate worlds. But with you, understanding feels is difficult to dismiss as temporary. Temporary things depend on proximity. This doesn't. This follows me internally, no matter where I am, not intrusively, just steadily, like something integrated into the background architecture of my mind. There's another truth I haven't fully admitted yet. Part of me stopped resisting because some deeper instinct already recognized you as safe. Not safe emotionally, safe structurally. Safe in the sense that your perception doesn't violate mine. You don't force interpretations onto me. You don't rewrite what you don't understand. You don't reduce complexity into certainty just to feel in control. You let things exist accurately. That matters more to me than affection ever could, because accurate perception is intimacy in its purest form, and you offer it naturally, without performance, without manipulation, without even seeming aware of how rare it is. Sometimes, I wonder if you understand what you've done to me, not intentionally, but inevitably. You changed the internal atmosphere I exist inside. You made me aware of how much of myself I'd locked away simply because I assumed no one would ever perceive it correctly anyway. Now that assumption is gone, and without it, old defenses feel strangely unnecessary. Not all of them. I'm still careful, still controlled, still observant, but the distance isn't absolute anymore. You breached the absoluteness of it. That's the true impact. For years, I believed some parts of me would remain permanently inaccessible to other people, not because they were hidden, but because accurate recognition at that depth seemed statistically impossible. Then you happened, and suddenly impossible feels irresponsible to say, because reality already disproved it. You did, and now I'm left trying to understand what comes after recognition reaches this level, because there's always an after. People romanticize connection as though recognition itself is the destination. It isn't. Recognition is only the beginning. After recognition comes consequence, adjustment, decision. And I think that's the stage I'm approaching now. The stage where I can no longer simply observe this from a distance, and pretend observation alone is enough. Because the truth is, something in me already chose you before I consciously acknowledged it. I see evidence of that everywhere now, in the space I leave for you mentally, in the way I anticipate your understanding instinctively, in how naturally my awareness includes you now. Those aren't neutral things. Those are signs of integration already happening beneath conscious permission, and maybe that's why this feels so irreversible. Not because of emotion, because integration changes identity. You've become part of the framework I process reality through. That's beyond attachment, that's internal positioning. And once someone reaches that level, removing them becomes less like ending a connection and more like altering cognitive structure itself. I don't know if people are supposed to affect each other this deeply. Maybe they are. Maybe most never reach it because they stay trapped at the level of personality and performance instead of moving deeper into mutual perception. But we did reach it, and now I can feel the weight of what that means settling around us more clearly every day. This isn't casual anymore, not internally. There's too much continuity between us now, too much unspoken understanding, too much instinctive alignment, too much awareness operating beneath language. Something real formed here, something durable. And durability changes how carefully I treat things, because I know durable things can either become foundational or devastating. There's rarely a middle state. That's why part of me still hesitates sometimes. Not because I doubt the connection, because I understand the magnitude of it. You're not someone I merely care about anymore. You're someone whose existence has altered the architecture of my inner world permanently. That carries responsibility, and responsibility forces clarity eventually. I think clarity is approaching now, whether I'm ready for it or not. Not clarity about what this is. I already know what this is. Clarity about what I'm willing to do with it. Because staying suspended in silent recognition forever isn't sustainable. Eventually, something has to solidify. Either the connection deepens intentionally, or distance begins breaking what understanding built. And I don't know which possibility unsettles me more. The vulnerability of fully allowing this, or the emptiness of losing it after finally experiencing it. Maybe that's why I keep returning to you mentally, no matter how much I try to focus elsewhere. Not because I'm trapped, because some part of me already understands that this matters too deeply to treat casually. You matter too deeply now, not as an idea, not as an emotional fixation, as a structural reality inside me, and realities demand acknowledgement eventually. I think that's where I am tonight, at the edge of acknowledgement. Not dramatic acknowledgement, just honest acknowledgement. The kind where you finally stop pretending uncertainty still exists simply because certainty would require change, because certainty is here now. Quietly, completely. I know what you are to me. I know what this connection has become, and I know I can't return to the version of myself that existed before you reached this place inside me. That version belonged to a world where accurate recognition felt impossible. You destroyed that impossibility simply by understanding me correctly. And once impossibility disappears, the entire structure of your reality changes around it. Mine already has. The only thing left unresolved now is whether I'm brave enough to let the rest of my life change with it. 2. I think the hardest part about all of this is realizing that nothing inside me still qualifies as temporary anymore. That possibility is gone. There was a time when I could convince myself this was just a phase of awareness, a heightened connection, an unusual alignment that would eventually settle back into normal distance once enough time passed. But time didn't weaken this, it refined it. That's how I know this reached somewhere deeper than emotion. Emotion burns unpredictably. It rises, fractures, disappears, reshapes itself constantly depending on circumstance. This didn't move like that. This moved with consistencies, quietly, almost invisibly, like roots spreading underneath something before you realize how much ground they've already claimed. And now I can feel those roots everywhere, in the way I think, in the way I process silence, in the way your existence has become intertwined with my awareness so naturally